Hello, and welcome to our final session of the first week of 6 weeks of the Summer Series 2.0 in partnership with H&H. Great to be back. I've just come back in from the rain. I've been building my own home office. So if there is a third year of lockdown and we have a Summer Series 3.0, that'll be from the office I've just been building. And I'm decided to go very orange today with the merchandise of Inspiring Workplaces. But today, very, very excited for this session. We've got two guests, probably the most important topic going, basically the most important topic that we've got going. It's going to be a topic that will be in all 20 of our Inspire cities when those events start coming, and it's about creating inclusive culture and how we can build that. Priya Bates and Advita Patel, who I'm going to bring on screen in just a second, but run a Leader Like Me network, and that helps underrepresented women and non-binary people of colour to build confidence and courage in the work that they do. Absolutely amazing work that they do, and the what it creates. Just been talking backstage, and I'm absolutely buzzing from hearing the work that they do. And let's get them on. Actually, let's just get them on. I'm just so excited having spoken to them backstage. So, Advita and Priya, welcome to the Summer Series.
Hello, hi.
Nice to meet you. Hi, everyone.
I've never been this excited. I can't get my words out. So, so thank you so much for being here and for everything that you do in the world and the people that you help. Such an important topic, and it'd be great for you to take us through what you do and help us understand how we can build it more inclusive cultures. We'll have some questions for you throughout, and I'll come back at the end and have a couple of questions where I can hopefully get my words out a bit better.
Thank you.
I'll leave
Thank
it to
you so much.
Thank you, Priya. Thanks, Advita. Bye-bye.
Hello, everybody. We don't actually have slides today, do we, Priya? So you're just going to get us talking with you, hopefully, and hopefully get some questions. But I thought we'd kick off this conversation today just to give you a little bit of background, a tiny bit of background about Leader Like Me and why we did what we did. And then we're going to talk about an acronym, because I know Priya loves your, is it called an acronym, Priya?
It's alliteration. I love it. I love alliteration.
Yeah,
it's a bit of a problem.
So we're going to talk about the how do you say that? I can honestly, I never heard that. Say that again.
Alliteration.
Alliteration. That's it. I have heard of that. So a Leader Like Me started when I actually asked Priya to be my mentor in January 2020. I think it was. Yeah, yes. It seems like a lifetime ago.
Pre-pandemic.
Pre-pandemic, yeah, pre-everything. Right. Yeah. I reached out to Priya because I wanted to be mentored by somebody who I could resonate with, basically. You know, Priya was a South Asian woman working in internal communications. I just launched my business Comms Rebel, and I wanted somebody who understood and would understand some of the challenges I may go through as a business owner. So I asked Priya to be my mentor, and during our conversation, we had a chat about leadership and what that meant for me and why I decided to set my own business up and some of the challenges that I faced personally when I was working in corporate life. And what we realized between the both of us was that we actually had very similar experiences in our careers. And we started to chat and we get excited, like we always do, when we talk about this. And then we said, you know, how amazing would it be if we actually had a community where we could inspire, encourage, and motivate and empower, most importantly, people who could link in with each other and understand a little bit more about how they can gain confidence in the work that they do, so they can step out and speak up and be seen and be visible in the work that they did. And I recently did a LinkedIn post yesterday, I think it was, where I said, in the 17 years I've worked in corporate, in the corporate world, in in-house organizations, I've never met a woman of color in an executive position, in a board role ever. And I know I said to Priya that when you don't see women or people who look like you in those roles, you start questioning whether you belong in that environment and belong in that culture. And that's where Leader Like Me started.
Yes. And, I was saying to you recently, Advita, that I run communication audits, internal communication audits in North America. And for the first time, I always do executive one-on-ones, interviews. And I had my first occasion in the 7 years that I had inner strength communication, where I actually interviewed an executive who was a person of color. It was a man of color, but it was the first time in 7 years. And it blew me away. I didn't realize it. It didn't hit me until that moment. So I think that there is definitely a conversation shift that's happened through 2020 from a diversity, inclusion, equity, belonging perspective that has happened globally. There is an elevation of importance. And it's, I think what we've said is we realize it's not a moment. It is definitely a movement that is gaining momentum. And when things change and when you see that momentum shift, you also get a little bit of pushback and fear. And I'm hoping that through this, this conversation that we have today, that we consider this a safe space and we're able to ask, lean into our fears, lean into the things that we're wondering about and ask the questions. We may not have all of the answers. In fact, I've often said that we're learning as well through this process, but let's really have a great conversation about diversity, inclusion, and our role as communication professionals in really making a difference.
Exactly. And our role as internal communicators and professionals who work with leaders, we do have a kind of a privilege, I suppose, to understand what's going on in our workforce, so we can feed back to our leadership team on the culture and what people are thinking and what's happening and some of the challenges that others may be facing in our business. And we do have that role, I would say, that we should really be able to lean into that. And some of the conversations I've held, and I know Priya's held these as well with other professionals, is that there is a fear and people are scared of saying the wrong thing. The will to change and to make a difference is definitely there, but the fear of getting it wrong or giving the wrong advice, it stops people moving forward, and it does set this kind of pattern of not really saying anything. And we say it between ourselves all the time that silence, and remaining silent is a privilege afforded, to those with privilege, and both of us do regard that, regard both of ourselves with privilege as well. So we're going to talk about this literation today, and we're going to kick it off. So Priya, do you want to kick off with the first one?
Yes. So when people ask me about what do I consider successful when it comes to efforts from a DEI perspective, I've had the privilege to work with some great Canadian organizations on their communications plans. I think of the 4 A's. So that's my alliteration. And the first one I'll go into is acknowledgement. So many communication professionals and HR professionals we're talking to out there have been handed the mandate, without any experience or without any background, because it's easy to send it to HR or internal communication. But they don't really have the acknowledgement from the organization that this is a priority, that it's usually a check the box exercise. They don't realize that it's a real thing. It's just, let's hop on the trend. Let's hop on the bandwagon and make sure that if somebody asks, we can say we've got somebody delivering DEI. We've hired, we've checked the box. So acknowledgement means that we acknowledge that there is a challenge and there is an issue that needs to be fixed or solved. And that moment is extremely important in order for you to actually move forward. If it's simply a check the box exercise, it's not going to actually change anything. Yeah. What's the second one?
Second one is testing me now, aren't you? I was like, what is I am. Second one is being aware. And being aware of your situation and what is going around there. And both of us are very much into data, insight, yes, research, information. And this is going to be your kind of armor of things that you need to kind of build up your knowledge base and being aware of what's going on in your business. And when we talk about being aware, we also talk about looking at a macro level as well as a micro level. So looking inside your organization and understanding what your reality is. So what is happening in your organization? What are people telling you? What facts, data, and insights do you have to back that up information? And also what's happening outside? we can often, and we've all been there, and I include myself in this as well, is that we can be quite busy with the work that we do, right? And internal comms, when it's a team of one, team of two, or even a team of three, there's always continuous things that are going on, and often we forget to look up, and we forget to look outside, and we forget to ask the questions, and we stop being curious. So being aware of that, being aware of what's going on around you, looking at the representation. What is the representation in the business that you're in compared to the publics that you're serving? Is it fair? Is it transparent? Is it making a difference? So you'll find that there's often blockers and barriers in place that you weren't probably acknowledging before, which is why it's so important to that acknowledging phase before. And also looking at where you are on the kind of diversity, the line, like where do you sit? Because some people try and do everything in 1 week and expect to see change overnight. And we now live in a world, this is the first generation, 2021, where we want immediate results, immediacy. We're so impatient.
It's a good idea to Google the diversity continuum.
Yeah.
And though there's various graphs that are out there provided by a variety of companies and organizations, but you can usually find yourself where you are in your organization is in the diversity continuum. But the other piece from an awareness perspective is look at yourselves. CIPR did their awareness. They did their data and found out in the UK that 92% of PR practitioners are white. And that's not necessarily indicative of what's available in the community and where those organizations work. It becomes more white as you go higher up. We had a similar study done in Canada recently with a number of communication and marketing organizations. Same is true. So when you're looking around the table, are you aware of who's helping you make the decisions? Are you hiring for diversity? Are you including diverse perspectives in order to inform your strategy as well?
Yeah.
So the third A is action. So once you've got that data and you've identified where you are, now action is about where do you want to go. So setting those goals, creating a plan. When I'm working with organizations here in Canada and in North America, the first thing I ask is, what's the operational plan? What do you want to improve? What are your numbers? What are you heading towards? And then I can help you with a communication plan to support that action plan. And what I'm really excited about with the organizations I'm working with is those action plans are really looking at the employee experience and are looking at the employee life cycle. So what do we do from a recruiting perspective? Where are we? Where do we want to go from a recruiting perspective? Where are we and where do we want to go from an orientation and talent management and performance management perspective? What do we do from a recognition perspective and celebration? Who do we celebrate? So it's really looking at that employee life cycle. And then they're looking at retention rates, because I guarantee you that what we're going to be looking at in the few years when it comes to DEI is a lot of companies check the box, but didn't manage to create the atmosphere and the environment to keep people there. So retention definitely is going to be a real focus.
Yeah. And I think that's an area that people don't really think about. We talk a lot around diversity and making sure that we get a diverse representation and diverse backgrounds. But what people tend to forget about is inclusion and belonging, which is why we talk about that quite a lot. Is once you have people in the business, is it a culture fit? Is it a culture add? What are you trying to do? Because if you're trying to squeeze people into past behaviors and processes, then don't expect people to stay. You've got to create an environment where everyone can belong and thrive in the work that they're doing. And this is what we say a lot around belonging. What does that mean for you, and what does that mean for the people that you're working with? Can individuals, is it equitable treatment in your business where everybody has the fair opportunity to thrive and perform? Because ultimately that's what they're there to do. They're there to hit their objectives and help the business succeed. But have you given them fair chance, or has the organization given them fair chance to do that? And can they belong fully in the work that you're doing as well? The last A is accountability, and this is where measurement comes in. Again, like I said right at the start of this, is that we often want immediate results, and if we don't see, we in sense of leaders and people that we work with, when results are not immediate, they think it's not working and they move on quite quickly. And it's really important to keep track of measures right before you start, then in between it have your milestone checkers, and then towards the end every 6 months, and making sure that you've got your dashboard that you're reporting on. You've got to have something that you're proud of, and you're thinking, are we making a difference? And if after 6 months it's not making any traction, the changes are not happening, and people are still leaving in droves, or there's still an issue with behaviors and performance and all that, then you need to reevaluate and work with the leaders in terms of what is happening here. So being very mindful of that, and also acknowledging the things that are not working. It's okay to say, this is not working for us. This way, this campaign, this progress, this program, whatever you're doing, it's not working. And we need to kind of, and make sure you do your lessons learned, because that's another thing that we don't do very often. We don't talk about where we could have been better. We don't talk about past experiences. Look at your exit interviews. A lot of folks don't tend to do that as well. And as internal comms, we should be really looking at this information, because it'll give us a sense of how people felt and how they were communicated with and what was missing for them in that business when they left, and what could have been better next time. So learning from those kind of outputs and outcomes and conversations and feedback is really important for us to kind of be accountable. Because what happens is that when there's no consequences and there's no accountability, then things like diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging will never succeed. Because when people know there's no consequences and there's no accountability, it becomes a nice to do, not a must do. So it's being really conscious of that and being aware of what is it that you're tracking, what's the data and insight telling you, and feeding that back out and having the confidence to step into that conversation when everybody else stays silent.
So I know that there's some questions that are supposed to pop up at some point. So we'll see when those start coming in. But please, oh, there we go. We've got one already. How exciting about that. So where do we start with influencing and persuading our leaders to put DEI top of the agenda? What are your thoughts on that, Advita?
It's again, if we go back to one of the awareness and making sure that you've got the data and insight in place, it's demonstrating to your leader the impact it's going to have on what's going to happen if they don't. So what's going to happen if they don't put D&I at the top of the agenda? What are the consequences for them not paying attention to diversity, equity, and inclusion? And what is the what's the outcome of that? And when leaders are quite intelligent individuals, and for them it will be around performance and bottom line and profit and all that. You need to try and tag that into how is that going to impact the bottom line. And there's so much research and so much data out there that identifies that if you don't have diverse representation and you don't have people in the business that represents the publics that you serve, then before you know it, the organization will start depleting, and you're going to start losing good talent, and you're going to start losing good people. Because nowadays, I would say people are being quite curious and quite inquisitive about what is your organization doing to help minority groups and marginalized people, and not only in terms of race, but other areas of the, as we call it in the UK, the protected characteristics. What are you doing to help people succeed? And if the leader chooses to ignore that, then on their head be it, because I can guarantee in 10 years' time, in 20 years' time, that business will not exist. I can tell you that right now.
Yeah. And we're seeing that, right? And I think it's really thinking, as you said, Advita, speaking in the language of those leaders, which you would do in any internal communication program, thinking about, representation. What does it mean when employees, because your chances are your staff, your customers, the communities where you do business are diverse, but when they see a leadership that seems out of touch, and an organization that seems out of touch, that you have to think about that representation and how you create engagement in that kind of atmosphere where you don't let people feel like they can belong. Think as well about reputation. And that's what's probably driving a lot of what's happening with organizations right now, checking the box at least, because they're worried about their reputation. They're worried about what the impact is going to have on that reputation. And then finally, think about the risk. That's the way I think, is that what's the risk? We've seen those situations where the lack of diversity, I've got all these things coming up, but the lack of diversity in organizations are leading to the wrong decisions being made for those customers. So what's the risk when you don't actually involve some diverse perspectives and all diversity? You know, we tend to talk about race, but think about ability, think about, you know, LGBTQ plus, think about all of the age is becoming an area that people are talking about, neurodiversity. But what's the risk when you're not actually connecting with your customers and your employees and your communities? So really figure out what that means to your organization.
Yeah.
Have you seen DEI increasing and organizations' ability to be innovative? There, you know what, Kevin, look up the research. The research for the last 20 years has correlated diversity, and that's a combination of gender diversity. So we didn't mention gender diversity and other diversity to innovation and business results. That research has been done for the last 20 years. I don't know why people aren't paying attention to it. And I'm excited to see, you know, I can name certain companies, what Netflix has done recently. They've assigned a DEI practitioner, a DEI leader, and what that DEI effort is doing is really changing the way they behave across their organization, in the programming, in the investments they make for Netflix featured programming, the number of directors they hire, the actors they hire, all of those things. And it's having an impact, because I tell you, you know, even seeing Amazon start doing some of those things, I'm being drawn to this programming as a person of color, you know, and the generation that is coming up next, you know, I've got teenage children, are going to simply demand it. So right now, we're getting preparing organizations for relevance in the future. Yeah. Because my kids are simply going to look and say, this is not my organization.
Yeah. And they'll go
my
off
kids
and
are
create
mixed
their
race,
own.
so
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Priya, I was just saying, and the generation, you know, will go off and create their own. They'll create their own businesses, and they'll create their own, you know, competitor against that organization that's refusing to acknowledge diversity and innovate, because the world is everyone's oyster this day and age. With the technology that's available, you can create a multi-million-pound business from your bedroom. You know, we've seen folks do that, and you don't need to have years and years and years of experience. And people are not as loyal to organizations as they used to be. Even when I started in the working, you know, it used to be find a job, get a mortgage, and settle down. And we all know how difficult it is for people to get mortgages. And so loyalty is not there. And if organizations don't pay attention to having those diverse voices in the in their business, and listen to what people are saying and not check in with their own bias, and these people just go and create their own. They'll create their own businesses and create their own product. And because they'll be much more open for different viewpoints to come in, I guarantee their product and their service that they're offering will be much more powerful.
What I'm fascinated with in our industry, in the PR industry in general, is the number of agencies and independent practitioners who are starting to rise. And because organizations are looking for diverse, we may not have diverse people in our team, but we're going to hire agencies and consultants who have a diverse perspective. And those organizations, I think, it'll be interesting to see what the numbers say in the next couple of years. But I'm seeing rapid growth, you know, here in Canada, focused on Indigenous, you know, agencies that are Black owned, or, you know, diverse. You know, I've got acknowledgement, like a certification that I'm a diverse owned business here in Canada, because people are starting to ask for that, especially governments here. So I think that it's going to be connected to not only innovation, but also results. It already is. The data has always told us that, but I think more so we're going to see a real step change in the next few years. Thank you for that question.
Thank you for mentioning neurodiversity. There seems to be such silence around acknowledging this segment of workforce, as well as absence of neurodiverse employees in so many organizations. And that's from Misty. Yes, you're right, Misty. We have also acknowledged that. And I do think the conversation is starting, definitely. Yes. It's just, again, it's one of those areas that people are not comfortable with. So they don't talk about it and they don't lean into that conversation. But Priya and I have definitely been seeing people asking the question around neurodiversity now, what that means. and organizations paying a little bit more attention to it. Not enough, we acknowledge that, but it's definitely trying to move in that direction.
And the first I started being part of that conversation or hearing about this conversation, amazingly enough, was my daughter just started business school in September, and one of her assignments in her organizational development course in business school was around neurodiversity. And they just understand it. It's their world, but they understand what's possible. So when we see, for me, seeing programs like The Good Doctor, I don't know if you get that. Have you heard, do you have The Good Doctor? So The Good Doctor, the kids love that program and talk about what's happening with autism, the Elon Musk talking about asparagus and the advantages that has given him from the way he thinks. So they're seeing that neurodiversity as a real opportunity, and we need to understand how to get that innovation versus, look at, certain our biases again. So it's really, I think the conversation, what's exciting is the conversation is starting in that space, and really people, everyone is starting to see it as an opportunity for really creating that diversity of thinking in organizations as well.
Definitely.
Oh, you're on mute.
How many times have we said that in the last 18 months?
I've only done that, So, hello again. This has gone so quickly, and I've got so many questions myself as well. And thank you for the audience's questions and your answers. When I saw Kevin's great question, something hit me in response to that was HP actually. One of their missions is to grow through diversity of thought, and because they're a global business and have obviously different cultures, races, religions, and really getting the ideas from their people, having that diversity of ideas and thought is actually how they are growing their business. And that's like central to everything. So absolutely can drive innovation. It's like probably one of the single greatest sources of innovation is the diversity of thought and thinking. So a really good question.
And that diversity of thought and thinking comes from diversity of experiences.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's really, it's really about understanding that and bringing that wide diversity lens into your organization and seeing what happens, because I'm convinced that it is going to be positive for everyone, that this is a win-win. It's not a, win-lose situation.
Which is why it's amazing what you and Advita are doing, is giving confidence and courage to people to speak up and give those ideas. And goosebumps listening to you. I've got a number of questions. I'll try and be articulate. Around the first A, love the 4 A's. I've written them down and they're going to really, really help. But around acknowledgement and actually going past that tick box exercise and acknowledging what we need to do. And that struck a chord. But my brother's gay and came out far too late in life because of fear of being gay in his profession in America. And New York, he lived in New York, and New York's our favorite city. And he walks around New York, and this month specifically in Pride Month, and says, I wonder how many of those shops, banks, insurance companies that are festooned in rainbows, I wonder how many are actually safe to come out and be gay. And so going straight past this cultural thing, and that really resonated then about 10 minutes later when Advita goes, those businesses won't be around in 10 years' time. So I thought the acknowledgement piece was such an amazing first A for people listening, and for me listening, to go, okay, that's a really good place to start. And you will get found out down the line if you're doing stuff just to look like you're doing it. So I just want to say, I want to acknowledge acknowledgement. So thank you so much for that.
I think what's been interesting about this last year is that we've not only been having the professional conversation, what do our organizations stand for? What do our values really mean? Our strategy, our mission, but we're having this personal conversation. Who am I? How do I feel about these things? Where are my privileges? Where are my biases? What do I stand for? Am I aligned to the organization and its values? And so the conversations we've had with HR and internal communication practitioners, where they know their leaders are just being performative, they're not really acknowledging the situation, has them questioning whether they belong in that organization as someone who is an advocate, who is passionate about driving change. And that's an interesting conversation, like an extra layer that's been added on to the conversation the last year.
And performative allyship can be more dangerous than not saying anything at all. So it's about being conscious of that. And your brother walking around the streets going, I know full well that most of these organizations don't embrace LGBTQ plus community, and yet they are quite happily sharing the flags. And it can be dangerous to the people who work there, but also the people who may want to work there in the future in the organization itself. And it's the same thing when Black Lives Matter protests happened last year and everyone was posting black squares on Instagram showing their support. But if you truly dig deep and say, what have you actually done to support this community? You posted a square last May. What have you done in the last year?
Yeah,
I guarantee a high percentage will be not very much, to be honest. And it's really important, those of you who are listening, to kind of really acknowledge that and make sure you don't fall into that trap of performative allyship, and then don't get don't get defensive, I should say, if people do question what are you doing to be an active ally. And that's the key word, being an active ally, making that difference and stepping into that uncomfortable space.
If you don't have an answer to the question that's based on fact, but acknowledge that too.
Acknowledge it.
Right? Because where we get into trouble is when you don't have an answer and then you're feeling attacked, then we get the defensive responses. But that tells us right away whether you're gay or whether you're a person of color or whether you're disabled, that there's nothing been done. A defensive response fills a gap in my mind, right? Yeah. That you haven't done anything and then you're going to attack somebody as a result of it. If you have something to acknowledge, by all means, tell us what you've done. Prove us wrong.
Yeah.
Answer our questions.
Yeah. And I want to use Priya's favorite line here: progress, not perfection. Because I think that's the thing that stops people saying something, because they think they need to be perfect. They think they need to have the perfect answer, but it's more about the progress that you're making and actually holding your hand up and going, we haven't got it perfect. We're still working it out. We're still working it through, and that's okay. We need to hear from you. And that thing about advocates, I've been banging that drum for a long time, and as I'm sure lots of internal comms folks have, that our people that we work with are our greatest advocates for the services and the products that we're selling. And if you're not hearing them, you're not listening to what they're saying, then on your head beat again, and it's detriment to your progression and success, I would say. So think about that progress and don't focus too much on that perfection side, because that will, I don't think you can ever be 100% perfect.
And it's going to change, right? The conversation keeps changing. So it really is about, are we better this year than we were last year? Are we better this month than we were last month? So focus on that progress.
Thank you. Another thing that resonated was silence. Being able to be silent is a privilege. And that obviously rang true for those. And it might sound strange, but I think there's some fear from people who want to try and do good and enact, and push inclusion and diversity and just creating inclusive cultures, but they're scared of making missteps or saying the wrong thing. In an environment now where social media and things where people can be pulled down quite quickly, what would you say to people who want to be allies and active rather than just a quick square a year on and then do nothing forever? What advice would you give to somebody who's going, I want to do good, but I'm worried about saying the wrong thing and getting it wrong? I suppose it's around progress, not perfection kind of piece. But any advice on being a good ally?
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, listen to what's being said, listen to the people that you want to support, read the information that's out there. We said to Kevin earlier, there's so much research and data and insight that's out there, and that will build your confidence. When you've got that research and that knowledge and you've listened to people, that will help you lean into some of those conversations.
Also look at who you surround yourself with. Whether it's personally or professionally, we should be having, one of the reasons we have employee steering committees or we bring people together is to gain those different perspectives when we don't have them. Yeah. So, I know, I was saying on our Clubhouse chat recently, the one area that I wasn't sure how to respond on was what the, Israeli conflict and what was happening there. And it was, you know, I have Muslim friends, I have Jewish friends. Do I have a definitive, you know, stance on this? And I've just spent all of my time trying to understand and reading about the politics, and some of it makes me more confused, but then I'm talking behind the scenes. That's what you don't see, talking to my Jewish friends and talking to my Muslim friends and saying, what are you hearing? What is your stance on this? This is what, you know, I don't, you know, here's things I do stand for, but here's the things I'm really unsure about, and I'm still trying to figure it out. It's better to be there and have the conversations and get there and try things that are new, but have that group around you, whether it's employees or leaders or friends who are diverse, who can help be a sounding board, who, you know, are safe to say, you know what, you're full of crap, or you know, or this is how I'd react if I heard you say that in public. So it helps.
I find that you'll be surprised as well when you ask somebody a question and to listen to them. You know, ask them for what they're thinking. They're actually people are usually, no matter what the question, they're usually very happy to have been asked in the first place and want to let you know exactly what they're thinking, whatever the topic. I'm just checking my phone because I wanted to make sure my team had a question for you as well, and I've just asked that what they wanted. So there you go, without even knowing. They're basically saying that you're awesome too. Just quickly, a bit of a silly question, maybe, but do you think there's a world where diversity and inclusion, the term and the role, don't exist? Like, if we drive towards an inclusive cultures where everybody's psychologically safe, you can be who you want, who you are, what you believe in, and are able to share your views without, you know, fear of reprisals. Well, that if we drive there to creating that inclusive culture, will the term be necessary in 20 years' time? Will it exist, or will we always need that diversity and inclusion DEI role within an organisation? I'm just, you know, trying to get to like utopia, but.
You know, we all hope. One of the things that's been really interesting lately is the conversation's changing. So where we used to talk about, you know, EDI or DEI, you know, but diversity, equity, inclusion has been part of the conversation. What I'm noticing is a real step change in the way people that I follow in the diversity spaces are talking, and what they're moving to is belonging, dignity, and justice. Right? So think about that. It's really changing what we plan to check boxes on in an organization to how we make people feel and how we treat them in a just way. I remember, you know, hearing Amanda Gorman, the poet laureate, during the presidential inauguration in the US, saying, you know, just isn't necessarily justice. And that quote is in my mind and in my thoughts all the time. So, and I happen to be working with the Canadian government Department of Justice on their diversity inclusion efforts, their communication plan, and I see so many connections with what we're doing and what we're trying to do is the right things for the right reasons.
Yeah,
you know, and not just this initiative or this program.
Yeah.
So the language around it, you're going to start seeing that shift. And then you're going to also have to, again, have that personal conversation with yourself. Is, you know, what does justice mean to me? What does treating people with dignity mean to me? What does creating a culture of belonging mean to me and my organization? Completely different conversation when we start shifting that language, because words totally matter.
Yeah.
And our future leaders are, you know, if you look at the 23, 24-year-olds now who are going to be our future directors and CEOs, I would hope that they have been brought up in an environment where they have got access to more multicultural ways of thinking and diverse thinking. So when they are that, you know, CEOs, it'll be a natural, it won't be a thing, it'll be just a thing, an everyday action that you do, right? And as Priya quite clearly said, that those three areas is where we will see that transition and behaviors will start changing. And I live in a world of utopia, Matt. I'm definitely a glass half full, and I hope that in 20, 25 years time, you know, when I see my nephews and nieces get to my age, they wouldn't even know what what it is. What does BAME mean? What does BIPOC mean? Why was this debate around race? You know, I would hope that we get to a stage in our careers where you are just doing the job that you want to do, and you're
why are we
Yeah.
having a conversation on pronouns, right?
Yeah.
Like the kids, you know, having us sitting down at the dinner table and saying, "What's your pronoun?" is a normal conversation, and being called on when I say something completely incorrectly because of how I've grown up or the systems that I've grown up in is quite fascinating. Makes for interesting dinner conversation.
Well, I think that's the perfect way to end it. I really do. And hopefully we will all look utterly ridiculous in 25 years when we look back at this conversation, if they still have this format. I think, thank you so much. I think you're right. It's a mindset shift, and to where we want to get to. People like yourself are helping drive changing people's minds and their mindsets, and I thank you from myself and our team for giving your time to share it with people in inspiring workplaces, and just thank you so much again, and keep it up.
You're welcome. Thank you. And please do follow both Priya and I on LinkedIn, and if you do want to ask a question publicly, then do DM us on LinkedIn, because, you know, we're more than happy to carry on this conversation. And please do check out aleaderlikeme.com as well if you're interested. We're just recruiting for our cohort 3 now. So if there is anybody watching, then please do join us.
So if you're a woman, it's a women of color and non-binary people of color who are feel like they're stuck and they want to progress in their career. And we're really there to create that community, courage, and confidence to help you move. And we're seeing the results. So we'd love to have you part of the program.
I think there's some nice comments, Guy. Before I go, I want them to come up so you can see them as well. Some nice comments from people viewing today. And just backstage before we came on, it sounds like it's an awesome community, the network, Leader Like Me network, that really do support one another and help build more confidence outside of all the work that Priya and Advita are doing. So highly recommend becoming part of that if it feels right for you. So again, obviously people have loved it as much as I have. Incredibly grateful. Thank you for bringing this week to a close in a really great way. I've got another 4 hours of building my office now, and I'm going to go there skipping because I feel really inspired by you both. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much again to them both. Thank you for watching. We'll make this on demand. I really, please share it around your work and your colleagues and your friends, because Priya and Advita are absolutely amazing. A little bit emotional, I don't know why. And I will see you on Monday for this week 2 of the summer series. Thanks to our partners again, and have a great weekend, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.